I cannot believe I left my wallet yet again. That's the second time this week. God, I gotta get my life together. I swear, every day it's something. Excuse me, do you all accept Apple Pay? Oh, you do? Great. Okay, give me just a second. Go to wallets, continue, credit, debit. Damn it, I gotta add the security code? How about Venmo? Never mind, that's not for businesses. Well, how about PayPal? Is that okay? Yeah? Okay, let's see. Damn it, I forgot my password. God, man, how many different ways can you pay for something? The concept of commerce is supposed to be simple. If you give me this, then I agree to give you equal value in goods or services. Pretty straightforward, right? In everyday conversation, currency and money usually refer to the same thing, but their economic functions are just about polar opposite. You see, currency is a medium of exchange and a unit of account. It's portable, durable, divisible, and fungible. So, what's the difference? Well, money is all of that, plus a store of value over time. So, whether we're talking about actual gold or digital gold, money has taken on numerous forms. Matter of fact, it also has more names than ever before, like equities, commodities, royalties, indices, subsidies, CDs, CFDs, deeds, derivatives, collectibles, licenses, points, grants, loans, bonds, funds, futures, options, cryptos, and you get the point. But here's the thing, the majority of what we recognize as money today is nothing more than faith in a system. The bills in your wallet are a hoax. The numbers you see in your account, that's just a mirage. In fact, they don't even hide it. In America, it is literally printed on the currency itself. So the government is pretty much telling you right to your face, this right here, ain't worth nothing. So it's been roughly 5,000 years since primitive currency first emerged in ancient Mesopotamia. So humanity has come a long way from hauling precious metals to make transactions. If you haven't had a chance to go watch my What in the World is Money video, now would be a great time to pause this one and go check that out, because we're going to fast forward a few millennia, alright? So, throughout most of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century, the majority of money was representative, relying mostly on the gold standard. But on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon removed the US dollar's peg to gold.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
So basically, what that means is the Fed was no longer allowed to redeem currencies for precious metals. Then a few years later, in 1976, American money was fully decoupled and the gold standard was abandoned altogether. In layman's terms, what that means is that we've moved away from commodity money to something called fiat currency. And now the US government doesn't even acknowledge precious metals as money anymore. But if the US Treasury's financial statements are to be believed, they still hold more than 260 million fine troy ounces of gold. That is over 8,100 metric tons of bullion, coins, working stock, and all other miscellaneous gold. The total book value of that is estimated to be over 11 billion US dollars. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that for a long time, money actually meant something. Governments used to stamp coins with a face value or a mark that indicated its weight and its purity, but the value would remain the same even if it was melted down. You see, there was a tangibility to value, but over time, we gravitated towards convenience over substance. So take, for example, music, TV shows, and movies. When was the last time you actually went out and bought a physical copy? It's probably been a minute, right? That's because most of us stream everything now. I mean, if you can summon what you want anywhere at any time, then what's the difference, right? Well, sometimes it's good to actually own the physical asset instead of relying on a decent Wi Fi signal. So that same principle can be applied to currencies. Our perception of what money is and how it's earned has gone through significant changes, and it's still evolving. But what remains a constant is that money's value comes from it being guaranteed. Regardless of what you call it or what it's made of, the unit of account is the measure of that guaranteed value. Without that, there would be no meaning to profits, losses, liabilities, and assets. So it's the single most important thing about money next to long term stability. So the question begs, what gives a sense of stability to fiat currencies? I mean, they have no intrinsic value, so how do governments get people to have faith in the system? Well, the answer to that is easy: taxation. You see, the purpose of taxes, according to modern monetary theory, is to establish the need for your currency. If all of your tax obligations must be paid in your sovereign currency, that creates the need to obtain the currency to settle your tax bill with the government. So the fact that governments levy taxes is what makes people want and need fiat currencies. So by and large, people tend to trust and rely on the government. Therefore, they trust and rely on the currency that they designate as legal tender. And now all of the world powers have converted to fiat, and each of their currencies is artificially assigned a value. The strength or weakness is completely subject to the whims of policymakers and central bankers. They can basically print as much currency as they need and want, thereby diluting its value. I think there's a term for something like that. Oh, yeah, it's called inflation. The US Federal Reserve, which, believe it or not, is actually a private central bank and not part of the federal government, can indirectly cause inflation by doing something called quantitative easing, or QE. Now, the main goal of this is to change ownership of assets by offering to purchase them from commercial banks. In turn, that motivates the commercial banks to lend more to the public, which has the exact same effect as increasing the money supply. And monetary policies like this is exactly how modern day governments debase their currency. Now, if you research, you'll see that the fiat dollar system is what led to the development of international credit markets. This system works fine unto itself, but what if out of control deficit spending forces citizens to foot the bill for a government bailout? Or what happens if the credit worthiness of a nation is called into question? Actually, let's focus on the word credit. Now, this is a really unique invention that circumvents patience and planning to accumulate enough assets in order to afford something. It's basically the intangible standing in for the tangible, or to put it in layman's terms, borrowing value from the future. And that's exactly what our global monetary system has become: a bunch of debtors that force future generations to deal with the payments. Over 90% of money in the world economy today is created from debt by banks, while the remaining fraction is created by governments. So instead of being a storage place for deposits like they originated, banks have become financial intermediaries between savers and borrowers. Now, banks don't actually lend real money, they create it from debt. And since debt is practically unlimited, so is the supply of what you consider as money. So each time someone takes out a loan to start a small business or a mortgage for a home and so on and so forth, new money is generated. But I'm not talking about the cotton bills in your wallet. Nah, I'm referring to the electronic deposits that show up when you check your account balance. The totals you see in your checking and savings accounts are just entries in the banking system. In other words, most of the money in the world isn't rooted in reality. It's just a virtual fabrication. So all of those dollars and cents you see coming in and out of your bank are just liabilities, or better yet, IOUs that aren't backed by anything except faith. By creating these quote unquote IOUs, banks effectively create a substitute for actual assets. So each time you swipe your card or connect your checking and routing numbers, you can spend as though you're exchanging real value. So nearly everyone on the entire planet happily accepts digital abstractions of something that has absolutely no intrinsic value to begin with, all in the name of monetary optimization. The unfortunate reality is, the more convenient we try to make things, the more complicated they become. So take for example, if you've ever tried to send or receive a large sum of money, you can damn near feel the friction of that transaction. It's usually slow, inefficient, inconvenient, and expensive. Now juxtapose that to having cash on hand to get what you want. It's way less hurdles to deal with, but obviously it's not as safe. So think about just how far we've come. We went from barter to raw metal to coinage to paper to plastic and now to electronic money. So you can't even call cash king anymore. It's damn near obsolete. We as a human race are always innovating. We're constantly looking for and inventing newer, faster, lower cost methods of exchanging goods and services. But ironically, technology is less efficient in many ways. Physical money, despite all of its shortcomings, is still the cheapest method of transacting because it's free. You can't really beat that. So, if currencies ever become completely intangible, central banks can then implement negative interest rates. Usually, this monetary tactic is used by countries that have chronically weak economic growth. It's supposed to act as incentive to invest, lend, and spend money rather than keep it safe. Now, that's great news for the economy as a whole, but the downside is that it can eat away at your checking and savings accounts. You see, saving money blocks the flow of commerce. Passive commerce leads to deflation, which leads to a stagnant economy. So, needless to say, banks and governments don't want people to get into the habit of being fiscally conservative. But a handful of countries have already adopted negative interest rate policies. The Bank of Japan famously did so back in January of 2016. Now, God forbid this ever becomes a worldwide trend because governments can basically penalize and criminalize holding and using physical currencies. Tangible money may not be the right tool for the majority of transactions, but doing away with it altogether removes an all too important choice and safeguard against government abuse. So, what is the motive behind all of this advancement? Well, the powers that be want to shift all transactions to card or electronic banking so that there's a data trail for all aspects of your life. If you think about it, even most payroll accounting is exclusively online. Like you probably get direct deposit from your employer, right? Well, how do you feel when you see tax withholdings automatically deducted out of what you earned? I bet you just accept it as a reality, right? But if there was somebody standing by the exit to collect those exact same taxes in cash every single day once you clock out, I guarantee you would be ready to fight. So, intangible money has caused us to let our guard down. Whether it be mobile POS attachments, apps that autofill your card information, or remote deposit capture, the goal of government and big business is to be all up in your business. If physical currencies are ever completely eliminated, there will be absolutely no level of privacy. They'll be able to see everything you buy, sell, gift, or donate and potentially tax you for it. And as long as governments collect taxes, they'll be able to maintain their authority to dictate and manipulate the currency in which they're paid. Now, many people haven't noticed, but there's been a worldwide war on cash over the last few decades. Actually, many countries have placed severe limits on how much cash you can spend, and even gone so far as to demonetize their larger bills. So, if you want to make a purchase that exceeds the restricted amount, you have to use a card, non transferable check, or a bank wire. Now, of course, politicians hide behind the excuse of national security as their reason for this type of legislation, but come on now. We all know that self interest is the real reason. Now, as I alluded to a moment ago, corporations are definitely in on this too. They just love to lobby the government for these types of laws. For example, some airlines have outright abolished all cash payment options at the kiosk, ticket counters, and of course on the plane. And credit card companies hate cash even more because they can't charge a premium to merchants if customers don't swipe. Matter of fact, Visa went so far as to offer a $10,000 reward to small business owners as part of a cashless challenge. So some corporations have literally funded efforts to help eliminate tangible money. Now it appears that big business has figured out that there are some things worth more than money itself: debt and data. You see, even though they're intangible commodities, they're much more lucrative than a one time purchase. Now, it's pretty easy to comprehend why debt is more valuable than money because it accrues interest. But what about data? Well, look no further than our willingness to give away more and more of our personal information. Our incessant need for convenience has created a system where we've become slaves, unaware of both our status and our masters. We rush to the internet expecting liberty and neutrality, but what we get is surveillance capitalism unilaterally procuring all aspects of our lives. Each word you search, all the sites you visit, the time of day you're engaged, how long you stayed, the location you're checked into, every post, every like, every hashtag, every connection, every email, all the items in your shopping cart, and any of the devices you use to do it are all monitored, assessed, aggregated, and auctioned off to the highest bidders, just so they can target you to spend money you don't have on things you don't need to impress people you don't even know. Multi-billion dollar tech giants like Google and Facebook understand that there's a marketable difference between a pure accumulation of resources and infonomics. Monetizing their platform was just the first step. Selling user data was inevitably next. So the Internet of Things has become a worldwide web of wealth. We really have to look at data harvesting as more than a cute little niche. It's a bustling economy that operates largely in the shadows. For instance, did you know that life insurance companies can use your social media posts to determine their premiums? And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Check out this infographic to see all of the data that some of the world's biggest tech companies have already collected on you. So privacy is all but an illusion, especially with e-com, fintech, smart home, and wearable gadgets. All you gotta do is go back a few years and look at the top 10 companies globally according to market capitalization. They produce products and services. But now, more than half of the top 10 companies are database platforms. That is a huge fundamental shift as far as how the market views the value of data. So obviously, you can directly attribute this evolution to the rise of technology, but particularly smartphones. They've become vessels for communication and compensation. Social media influencers have basically turned them into ATMs, converting likes into dollars. All of these content creators share photos and videos as extended marketing campaigns from brands that pay them to peddle whatever they hope to sell. Audience engagement from their followers and subscribers has become a form of social currency, which further abstracts the idea of money. Now, social currency isn't necessarily something new. Word of mouth has always existed. But when you mix that with technology, it has a big impact on commerce. Think about it. When you use search engines like Yelp or Google to find a business, if they have terrible reviews, you probably won't even consider spending your money there. And the same thing goes for eBay, Amazon, Airbnb, and the very apps themselves. So ratings and reviews directly correlate to revenue. Social currency isn't some nebulous gimmick or a fad. It's a quantifiable data set via the digital grapevine. In fact, China has taken it to the next level, merging real world behavior with technology and implementing a social credit system. So citizens literally receive scores based on how they behave on a moral and societal level, and if they commit an infraction, they can be punished or even banished. For now, it's just a pilot program run by city councils and a few private tech firms, but the plan is for the system to become mandatory nationwide. Now, there's a lot of propaganda suggesting that this is the epitome of social engineering, but it's more a product of capitalism than totalitarianism. While boundaries still exist on a sovereign level, they are all but vanishing on a social level. Our efforts to connect through technology have essentially made the world borderless. The internet is democratizing capitalism and making commerce more scalable. People who could never get financing before are now able to acquire it through non traditional means like crowdfunding and microlending all across the globe. And even more of us are becoming digital nomads, buying, selling, and working remotely. We spend so much of our time in front of computers and mobile devices that it only makes sense that the next evolution of money would be a digital currency. So, in direct response to all of this data harvesting, enter cryptocurrencies. These relatively new digital assets have thrown a wrench into the game for many long standing industries, particularly finance. They were created with the intent of freeing people from abusive monetary policies. So, instead of bureaucrats and bankers having all of the power, the users themselves control it. Now, this is accomplished by direct peer to peer transactions. It's permissionless, censorship resistant, completely transparent, yet pseudonymous. Now, you probably heard of Bitcoin because it's the first, most popular, and most valuable of all the cryptocurrencies. It avoids having a middleman by essentially distributing a copy of every transaction in its entire history to any and everyone who wants it. Now, it's also worth noting that cryptocurrencies aren't backed by anything and have no physical form. So, in a sense, they're very much like any other fiat currency, because the value is contingent on the idea that a large enough group of people are willing to share in the fantasy. However, what makes cryptocurrency so unique is the revolutionary technology that powers it, known as blockchain. This acts as a decentralized, digitized public ledger. So, in a nutshell, you can think of it as an electronic audit that tracks and stores the time, date, amount, and encrypted ownership information of all the digital currencies it has in circulation for each respective crypto. These digital coins don't require the participation of any government or corporation to validate transactions. Instead, individuals and groups decide to become something called miners, acting as notaries authorizing transactions. They do this by using specialized computing hardware to solve complex math problems known as cryptography. Whoever has the fastest computers to accurately solve the equations are rewarded with crypto for their services. All transactions are bundled together as blocks of data in the network every few minutes and added to a public ledger. In order for a new block to form, every node in the network must reach consensus. These blocks are then sequentially linked to the one before and after it, creating a chain which protects the cryptocurrency from corruption and double spending. You know what? This deserves its own video. Anyway, crypto is a game changer because it represents a decentralized form of money that's more secure, more fungible, and more functional than anything that's ever existed. We are way beyond stores of value and mediums of exchange. Now we're in the age of programmable money. However, the majority of people remain skeptical of the utility, vulnerability, and volatility of all these virtual coins. Are they truly currencies, commodities, or something else entirely? A lot of people see cryptocurrencies as nothing more than a silly speculative bubble like tulip mania. But all that aside, what are the tax implications for something governments don't issue, control, or regulate? As connected as the internet has made us, the reality is that much of the world is still isolated. Our current monetary system excludes roughly 2 billion people worldwide. These individuals are known as the unbanked or underbanked. Blockchain technology attempts to reach all of these people, but it has numerous flaws. In many ways, it's a solution in search of a problem. First of all, each cryptocurrency is inherently parasitic because you got to use digital payment methods just to acquire one. So that means you need a smart device, internet access, and government issued legal tender. That's a complete non starter to these marginalized people whom lack access to mainstream financial services and modern technology. Furthermore, it's not solely a technological issue, it's more of a sociological challenge to address holistically with education. As you can clearly see, all commerce is inherently global with interlinked economies. The future of money isn't just about the creation of new currencies, it's also about creating new methods to use existing currencies and existing units of account. The globalization of socialization is applying pressure for the need of a trusted universal currency. Now, I highly doubt that we all ever agree to use one currency, but I do believe the world could get to a point where only a handful of them are in circulation. Truth be told, we're already on our way. Commodities like oil are valued in something called petrocurrencies. So, for example, if Australia wants to negotiate with one of the OPEC countries to import crude oil, the contract is usually priced in USD. Many of the oil producing nations peg their exports to the American dollar, so if it rises in value, so does the price of all of their domestic goods and services. Ultimately, there's no way of knowing where we're headed in terms of which form of money will be most widely accepted. But one thing is for sure, though, there is no ignoring history. The roadmap to financial disaster was printed thousands of years ago. That path shows us that every fiat currency in history has failed and gone to zero. Every single one. If we learn nothing else from history, we need to learn this. Empires crumble because of their government's paper-thin promises and monetary mismanagement, but also due to loss of acceptance and international boycott of their currency. Precious metals like gold, however, cannot go to zero. They will always be valuable and have physical applications beyond their vanity. There's no way anybody can print more of them or artificially inflate them. Precious metals are real money because they're naturally occurring, sustainable capital assets. They are mediums of exchange, units of account, portable, durable, divisible, fungible, and stores of value over time. In fact, in America, the statutory price of gold is set by law. It's been sitting at a constant of 42.2 USD per fine troy ounce since 1973 and does not fluctuate with the market price. Actually, the book value of the gold held by the US Treasury that I mentioned earlier in this video is determined by using this statutory price. But precious metals didn't become money because of some random designation by policymakers and financiers. Rather, it's the collateral value that those metals represented. They have always been an extension of the barter system. So if the world ever becomes completely cashless, we could very well see a return to that system. In conclusion, money has evolved over thousands of years to suit the needs of its time and its population. It shapes society, and society helps to shape it. That's how it's always been and always will be. Governments and central banks can only act as gatekeepers of commerce for so long before it all comes crashing down. A replacement for our current monetary system is invariable and inevitable. So as a fully cashless society looms, we'll need something to act as a hedge against inflation, demonetization, and disintegration of fiat currencies. So do everything you can now to educate yourself, or get left behind in the next evolution of money. Thanks so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed the content, do me a favor, hit that like button. Also leave a comment and subscribe. And while you're at it, follow me on social media. Those links are provided in the About section of this channel. So until next time, just remember that the game is free. All you gotta do is pay attention.